RPG Lessons Learned. When the game is over, when your players are gone, that's when lessons are learned. Find us online at rpgllpodcast.com, email us at rpgllpodcast@gmail.com, and find us on Blue Sky at rpgll. Hi, and welcome to RPG Lessons Learned, the show where you can learn from our mistakes. I'm Dusty, and with me, as always, is Tanner. Hi, Tanner.
Hail and well met, traveler.
So, a couple things. First of all, I haven't released any episodes in a while, but we have some previously recorded. So this is likely to be released immediately after another episode, even though, awkward statement, Tanner, we've kind of been on a break from each other.
We have, and I think that's kind of how adult relationships and friendships work sometimes. I think the sign of a good, healthy relationship and friendship as an adult or as a gaming group is that you can take some time away from each other to deal with life, and then you can get back together and it's like nothing happened.
And we have also been seeing other people.
We have. I've been playing quite a few games in the meantime, as have you. I like our one-on-one time, but sometimes I got to bring some other people involved,
Absolutely. So I'm really excited for this episode. You ran my favorite dungeon that I've written, Dragon in the Dungeon. The hex crawl that we talked about on a prior episode. By hex crawl, the hex dungeon, I should say, the 14-room hex dungeon, that formula that I came up with and keep reusing. And the idea behind it was that, Dungeons and Dragons have so few literal dungeons, like where you keep prisoner dungeons with literal dragons. And I wanted to do a literal dungeon with a literal dragon, but you ran it for some friends and family or family?
Yeah. So my wife and my wife's mom, my mother-in-law, and her brother and sister, who are both teenage aged.
So how did Dragon in the Dungeon go running it? Actually, this is intended to be kind of a starter, module for people. Was this one of their first RPG sessions, if not the first?
This was their second. So my wife, Alex, has played a ton of RPGs in the past with me. So it was awesome that she was there to kind of help along her mom and her brother and her sister, who were interested in the idea and kind of had a vague idea of what was going on. But this was the second session that we played together. And the first one we played was one of Ben Milton's adventures, Lair of the Keymaster, which is great. I don't know if we're going to talk about it for a whole episode. We might talk about it at a later date. But that is also a dungeon with a dragon in it. So this was the second. They had back-to-back dragons in dungeons, and it was so funny because as we were exploring, they were seeing like the red scales and the teeth marks and the claw marks, and they're like, there's not going to be another dragon. It's got to be something else. And lo and behold, it was another dragon. It was awesome. It was a fun moment. But yeah, it was a great time, and we played it in the Tan Hack, which is my personal customization of my favorite kinds of OSR rules that we've talked about before, and that I've ran for you before, Dusty. And yeah, it was a hoot. It was a great time, man.
So practical questions. Did you run it as a hex dungeon or did you translate it into a more normal map?
No, I ran this one as a hex dungeon, and I printed out a hex dungeon worksheet. I wish I had those here. I'll have to send you a picture of them after the time, because it's so fun to see how people's notes are different, because Alex's notes were like very detailed and her brother's notes, he was just like kind of doodling pictures and stuff. But yes, I gave them like kind of the heads up that, hey, you're going to be starting on this, in this hex, and then exploring outwards from there. And they got that pretty quick.
Did they enjoy the act of mapping?
It was a split decision, because the first dungeon I ran, Lair of the Keymaster, was entirely me just verbally describing it. I said, this hallway stretches to the east and the west as far as you can see, and then at the very end, there's a little branch. And they had some fun moments during that of doing that and being like, oh, this must connect to here, even though they didn't line up on their drawings. Like, they were figuring it out and stuff. And then after this session with Dragon in the Dungeon, I asked, which do you guys prefer? Do you guys like hex maps, and or do you guys like freehand drawing? and Alex and her sister liked the hex dungeons, and her brother and her mom liked the freehand mapping. So,
Ooh.
different strokes for different folks, but I think it's cool that it was, they got to see both ends of it and at least, know what both options were like.
I love a split decision.
Yeah.
So, and I'm jumping around asking questions as I'm interested. I'm going to keep doing that. Actually, I was debating asking you kind of the story of how they engage, but let me keep asking some interesting questions that I'm interested in. There's a single point of failure at the bottom of the oubliette where you either find the secret the secret passage into the rest of the dungeon or you don't. There are some hints you can pick up. You can hear kind of some mining through the captain's office. The oubliette, you don't have to make a roll. A thorough search will also uncover the passage. Did this single point of failure present a huge problem, or did you paper over that somehow?
No, that worked pretty well as written. So they visited the warden pretty early on, and they heard the noise coming from behind the captain's office. So they knew that there was something else going on in that direction. And they were like splitting up, like trying to get the captain out of the office so they could hear listen at the walls and stuff, and they had mixed success with that. But when they got to the oubliette, that is where the first and only fatality happened, as I texted you about.
Yes, so, you did.
Alex, my wife's character. This is how the oubliette is written. The floor of the oubliette is 10 feet lower than the floor of the prison. Unwary characters who enter will take 1d6 falling damage. So as we were entering that area, I asked for marching order because I wanted to know who was going to be the first. And my wife's, Alex, her character, she was playing a halfling. I did not decide that she was being particularly wary, but I said, okay, you get a save, like a dex save, to not fall in. And she failed the dex save. I said, okay, you're taking 1d6 damage. And she's like, can armor help me here? And I'm like, I don't think armor helping with fall damage makes much sense. And she's like, that's fair. Rolled a 6 on the damage die. She only had 4 HP, I think. So she was instantly knocked out. And the way the black hack works is that, or the tan hack and the black hack, once you get to somebody who's at 0 HP, you roll the dice to see if they were just conked out or if they take some sort of extra debilitating effect. They manage to get their way down there, and when they get to her, she rolls a 1 on a 1d6, which means she was killed instantly. Ooh. So the 10-foot drop took one of the characters out. But as they were poking around in the oubliette, Alex was rolling up a new character like right away, and they found her in the oubliette. Of course, her character was chained up there, and so they kind of had time to explore it. And yeah, the way you have this written, I think, is really great because it says if the characters don't make a roll to find the secret exit, so like they could roll it like I guess an elf or like a dwarf with stone cunning or some other similar effect could probably detect that one exit. It says oh wait, sorry. I was reading. Yeah, the secret exit. Yeah, it's a thorough search of the room, especially when they're touching the walls, will reveal it. Yeah, so it's like I like that you kind of leave it vague as to like what's going on here, like specifically how it is hidden. And I think that's kind of a concession to like the very brief format that this dungeon is in. But I liked your idea of it being like kind of hidden in a concentric spiral around the room. So if you're walking the edges of the room, you'll find it. I still would not recommend necessarily that people would design a hex dungeon with like one point of failure, that being said, I think you pulled it off, but it wouldn't be a recommendation that I do it that way in general.
I love it too much to change it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think it's a cool effect, and it kind of, I almost imagine it's like a matte painting kind of effect from like an old Lucasfilm movie or something. Like you shift the eye, and then suddenly Indiana Jones is, he's standing on something above the pit.
Specifically inspired by the Labyrinth. That
Oh,
scene where Sarah's in the outer circle of the labyrinth, and she's like, "How do I get in the labyrinth?" And the snail is like, right there, and the camera shifts perspective, and you're like, "Oh, there appear to be no archways, but there's really a ton of archways."
yeah, yeah. I love that. I think it can be fraught maybe to apply a movie making trick to an exploration based game that's verbal. But again, like you said, I don't know, if I were to like really zing you and tell you to update this dungeon, which I don't think you need to do at all, I would say, hey, maybe describe, like inspire the GM at the table as to how it's actually hidden rather than them kind of just like leaving them to figure out if they found it or not, maybe.
Yes, I do. I do just say a tunnel hidden by a clever optical illusion.
Yeah. So again, maybe people like that, but maybe some GMs would want more guidance on that. Like I said, I had the benefit of talking to you about this session before I played it, which is maybe the most useful thing you can do.
Yeah,
So yeah.
did I run this for you, or did we just talk about it?
No, we just talked about it.
Okay, I've never run this for you, but yes, I describe it whenever I run it. I describe it as kind of overlapping walls where the overlap isn't obvious
Mhm.
unless you see it from the right angle.
Yep.
Cool.
One other thing I want to compliment you on is your, I don't know if this is like a BFRPG kind of house style, but adding the check boxes for monster HP and the fact that each giant rat or kobold or whatever has slightly different amounts of rolled HP, that makes it like super fun and super easy to just kind of tick them off and keep it interesting and dynamic because they don't know if a kobold's going to have 4 HP or 6 HP. You know what I mean? And it makes it just so easy to run at the table, so usable.
I can't claim credit for that. That is very BFRPG. BFRPG, any of their adventures, which by the way are 100% free to download at basicfantasy.org, no affiliation. I haven't said a no affiliation in so long. It feels so good. They do check marks or check boxes for hit points, and I just always thought it was genius. So I do that now, and I do print my dungeons and check off check boxes as a workbook. But having said that, as you were describing check boxes, I noticed the description of the 10 emaciated prisoners in D4, and I had the wrong number of check boxes by almost all of them.
Oh my god, it's literally unplayable.
Yes,
You're right. They should have 2 HP or well, now you got to update the PDF.
Now
that's probably why nobody wanted to talk to you about it on Reddit. They all saw that and they were like, dude, we cannot. Yeah. No, but that's awesome though. And I have been kind of doing that as scratch paper. Like when I'm running can hack for my buddies for my my hex crawl game, which we may talk about in a future episode. Like when I roll a random encounter, I will say, hey, okay, give me 2 minutes, guys. And I roll all the HP for the guys and I write little check boxes on a little scratch piece of paper. So I'm in love with it. I wish I would have discovered it earlier. It's sick.
Cool. So the guards, I don't come right out and say that they're not good people, but the conditions of the prison really strongly imply that the guards are not good people.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to let the players, when I run this for kids, they're like, oh, they blindly trust the guards and blindly trust that the prisoners are bad. And then I run this for adults, and the adults are like, man, these guards are terrible. These prisoners are mistreated. And I love that it can be seen different ways. How did your group, how did Alex's family see the guards?
What if I told you that the adventure ended with them fighting and killing all of the guards?
Now I do want to ask you, what is the story of your group engaging with this dungeon?
So they went in the dungeon, and they poked around in the prison area. And I think I did a good job of role playing the victim of the torture chamber. I kind of had to improvise like what their crime was, and all this stuff to I can't remember. It's been a couple weeks since I've run it, so I apologize if you have that written in.
No, I don't.
Okay,
it is meant to be improvised.
Yep. So I ran that, and I kind of improvised that one of the guys in the prison and his wife who's in the torture chamber, they got their great crime was that they got in a fight with their neighbors and accidentally killed one of them. Like they pushed him over and he broke his neck or something like that. And so after that, they're like, well, I don't know, like you're not a good guy, but like, I don't know if you deserve this. And so as they went through the oubliette, they kind of had that they were pretty set on at least rescuing the victim of the torture chamber. But they went deeper. They bartered with the mushroom people. They parlayed with them and kind of realized that that's not really where they're looking for. And they realized that the mushrooms people were not evil. They killed all the kobolds. They solved the little puzzle at the shrine, which I liked. They found the exit to the outside, like kind of the hidden exit from the ancient shrine. And then they snuck past the dragon, took a bunch of its treasure, didn't even wake it up. The dragon
nice.
was just a hazard. And then they came back out and they realized. So I basically had simulated in my head. I'm like, okay, they're in this other half of the hidden caves. In the meantime, the guards have returned to the jail in the oubliette and the torture chamber and found that they had released these people. So the guards were ready for them when they came back out. And the guards were saying, hey, we don't really care what you're doing, but you need to give us all of your treasure or we're going to tell the Earl about you. So there's nothing that makes players mad than getting mugged for their treasure. I've done it before in games and it's always awesome because it puts them in these like really hairy spots where they're like even players who don't really care about like getting gold, like what is there to do with gold pieces? That's kind of like a long-standing question. But like the moment an NPC is like, give me your stuff, oh man, they get mad and I love it. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about it, but when I was running my 5e game with Hex Dungeons, they got mugged by Githyanki. Like extra dimensional pirates came and they were like, level 8 or 9. And the Githyanki were like level 10 or 11 and they were in a bad spot. They're like, give us your stuff or we'll kill you. Boy, did that boil it for them. But the guards, I was kind of running them as corrupt bastards as I think they are written to be. And so the guards held them up and was like, then the players were like, no, screw this. And they fought and killed all the guards. They released all the prisoners. And then the Earl was like, if I ever see you again in these lands, I'm going to send men after you and kill you. And so that's how the adventure ended.
Wow. Did they have fun?
Yeah, I think they had a hoot. They were really pleased with your little puzzle in the ancient grotto.
You mean the puzzle that I completely ripped off from the Fifth Element?
Yeah, I mean, it is a basic puzzle. Like it's literally just put the right stuff on the right plinth or whatever, but it works. Yeah, they have to put air, earth, fire, and water on each of the 4 pillars, and it was fun for them to be like, how do we put air on a pillar? And then Alex's sister was like, I blow on it. And I'm like, yep, that works. And then the sword came loose. It was really funny though, because Alex's brother, who's 17 years old, he was like playing kind of a curmudgeonly cleric, and he like really wanted the magic sword. And so him and his sister, who's only a year older than him, they were like arguing. She's like, no, I'm the fighter. I should get the sword. And I'm like, she should probably get the sword. I mean, I'm not trying to influence anything. You guys can do it. And then they were arguing. And then I'm like, hey, wait, can clerics even use swords? And he's like, all right, she can have the sword. It was really funny.
You should run the Leprechaun adventure next because he can get a +1 shillelagh.
There we go. There we go.
It would be a blunt weapon.
As they were trying to figure out their prison guard standoff too, they eventually used the spell in the Tan Hack. Alex's brother used the spell Command, which is a creature obeys a single 3-word command that does not harm it. And they were trying to brainstorm, like, what is the worst thing we could make this guard say, So that was very fun to the teenagers at the table for a couple minutes. And my butt was falling asleep in the kitchen chair. So, but yeah, it was a hoot, man. They really enjoyed it. It was so fun to see them like immediately go from like, oh, we're doing a quest for the king and we're going to find a dragon, to being like, no, this situation sucks. Everybody here sucks. I'm getting mugged for my opals and moonstones that I worked, my fist-sized amethysts and sapphires that I worked really hard to kill these kobolds for. And then that, like, the dragon was just like kind of the reason things were happening. It was, like I said, it was only involved for them for like a half of a scene. It was really fun.
Do you mind if I read our text exchange
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
our audience? I have to say I'm reading it because it delighted me. And mostly I'm reading it because, 50 years from now, when I'm, in a nursing home with none of my marbles and I'm listening to this podcast to remember my life and my gaming, this will help me remember this text exchange, because this was Friday at 8:13 p.m. You text me and you say some stuff. And then in the meantime, I'm about to run this for Alex's family, and it's a picture of Dragon and Dungeon printed out. And I said, cool, have fun. Fun fact that if they encounter Frog, we'll come back to that, they'll be the first group ever to have done so, to my knowledge, because no group I've run through has ever encountered Frog. You said, I'll keep you updated. And then, like, over an hour later, you're like, Alex's character took 10-foot drop into the oubliette and was killed instantly. Laugh, cry face. I wrote, my bad.
We were all laughing at the table. So, it's just so funny. Just halflings down. Yeah.
I love the word unwary in the description. I was channeling Gygax. Mm-hmm. Like, I had just read Tomb of Horrors. I think he must say unwary in Tomb of Horrors. I'm making this up. I'm going to say like 9 times. Yeah. Someone is going to crack Tomb of Horrors and correct me and say he only said it, 0 times. But I just feel like Gary Gygax said unwary a lot. Mm-hmm. You said sad to report Frog remains undiscovered, but they were pretty appalled, they were already pretty appalled by everything else they found going on in the prison. They had a great time in the adventure, though. I love appalled. So few groups have actually been appalled at the guards. I've been a little disappointed by that.
Yeah, and I think it maybe depends on what their expectation is going into it. Like, I know Alex's brother and sister are they're rowdy teenagers. They're fun. I like hanging out with them. They're looking to pick fights and stuff. And I know that Alex's mom has a strong moral compass as well, and Alex does as well. So, like, it was just fun for them to be like I made them kind of callous and rude at first, because I think you did a good job of describing, like, the guards don't want, like, these are basically external auditors coming in to mess with their work, and so I kind of started with that, and then it escalated from there. So I think, knowingly or unknowingly, I think in my experience it was a well-written kind of escalation of delving deeper into kind of how messed up this whole location is. But yeah, you know what, like, the fun of OSR games is that you can present a lot of story or situations, and it's up to the players if they want to bite on it or not. I'm sure there are players who would say, yeah, this was messed up, but, like, my character doesn't care. I'm here to get treasure and kill a dragon. You know what I mean? Sure. Like I think the beauty of OSR games is that you can choose to be a do-gooder, or you can choose to get treasure and get out.
So a couple of other rapid fire questions. I know how much you hate my numbering scheme. How was that?
It was okay. For those who don't know, so when you have a hex grid, they don't line up nicely horizontally and vertically, right? Like, if you wanted to go horizontally across on horizontal hexes, you would have to, like, zigzag up and down. And so your columns would either all have odd numbers or all have even numbers. So, like, there's like A3 and A5, but there is no A4. But there's a B2, a B4, and a B6. So it's okay. I just don't ever find myself, for the amount of hexes that this is, if this was a 30 by 30 hex grid, I think a grid notation would be good. But the fact is that I'm never thinking about, well, what's going on in column B? It's no, what's going on in B4? And that's connected to B2 and B6. And so for me, it would make more sense. And when I do it, I just call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I kind of just, roll them around. I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. If it makes sense for your brain, I think that's fine. It didn't, like, impede me at all. But I think that's better suited for when you have, like, 5, like, I don't know, 10 rows and 10 columns rather than 5 and 3. You know what I mean?
Because of my dungeon notation, you wind up starting the key in the middle of the document.
Yeah. And I don't think that's bad. I think that you did, at the start of the key, you say start at C1 entryway. So I think you covered your butt there.
And then the mushroom grotto. is completely different from the rest of the dungeon. Like I wanted an environmental hazard, that's the underground river. I wanted a puzzle, that's the ancient shrine. I wanted some fights, got those in. The mushroom grotto is I just wanted something weird. I wanted one hex of just weirdness. But weirdness that if you learned what was going on and what the mushroom people were doing, weirdness that would kind of fit. Did they find the mushroom grotto totally out of left field and just weird?
When they go through the secret tunnel to the other side of the dungeon into the caves, they see the claw marks, they see the scales, they know people have been disappearing. So they have a pretty good idea it's some giant red reptile that's doing this. When they came across the mushroom people, they were like, they never got into the village. The guards kind of stopped them. But I told them there are no other exits to this area. They looked around, they saw the mushroom people, they saw there are no other exits, and they're like, we can come back here if we need. But I don't think what we're looking for is here, which I think is a valid, path to take. I think I overdo it on the weirdness a little bit because I think that's what excites me. I like to baffle my players and present kind of gonzo situations sometimes. And you're way more restrained with it, which I think is valid. I don't know if it read as like really weird as opposed to like there's kind of this other thing going on that is a little bit more out of left field, but it's not super core to what's going on if they're paying attention,
Fair. Anything I didn't ask that you wish I would have based on the experience that you had?
I wish the dragon had a name.
Ooh.
I think named bad guys. I think every dragon should have a name, even young dragons. Like, I think it adds to their mystique. I mean, if you're going to go to the trouble of naming every guard in the dungeon, I think the dragon deserves a name as well. How would they ever find it? Or maybe you could leave clues to it, like maybe the mushroom people refer to the dragon by its name as opposed to calling it a dragon, stuff like that. I think that would add to sort of the mythical nature of it rather than it feeling like an animal, which I think this dungeon kind of makes the dragon feel like an animal rather than a cunning reptile.
That's fair. Should I name the kobolds too?
Yeah, but only if they're funny.
The whack.
The whack, Drick,
Bop.
Yip. Yeah, stuff like that. For
Cool.
Sure.
Well, dude, I can't tell you what a thrill it was for me to get the text and be like, oh my God, someone's running this thing that I wrote. So thank you for texting me. Thank you for talking to me about it. It's such fun when you create something and put it out into the world for someone to use it. So thank you for giving me that thrill.
Absolutely. Now you owe me one. You got to run something that I wrote next time.
I do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for writing it. It was a hoot, and unexpected things happened, and it was a ton of fun. And for a first or second session game for a group of players with a moderately experienced GM, I think you couldn't ask for much more than that.
Awesome. Thank you for listening. People call them reviews, postmortems, retrospectives. We call them lessons learned, and we're sharing ours with you.